this time I want to share our history bit with us today. And I want to prepare you for something that I believe might be a little challenging to your belief in the scriptures. You might say, uh-oh, where are you about to go, Overseer Mo? My intention is to share truth with Zion. It is always my purpose to present information that will inform us and help us to be led to a more accurate understanding of the truth that Elohim has given to us. I believe that all of us who are in the Messiah, Yahshua, are desirous of receiving everything that Elohim has provided. Yahshua made a statement, and he said that man should not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of Elohim. What that says to us is that Yahshua, our Redeemer, made it very plain that whatever Elohim says is essential and necessary for us. And for those of us who have a desire to please the Father, I believe that we want to know everything that Elohim has said. Now, I want to present a topic for this history bit called the 400 years in Egypt question. You might say, why do you call it a question? The reason why I call it a question is based upon a reading found in Josephus, which will lead us to some other things that I want to share. But I want to begin by reading something found in Josephus in Antiquities of the Jews, Book 2, Chapter 15, and Paragraph 2. And this is what Josephus said with regard to the time frame of our ancient fathers being in Egypt. Listen to this. They left Egypt in the month Xanthicus, which is April, on the 15th day of the lunar month, 430 years after our forefather Abraham came into Canaan, but 215 years only after Jacob removed into Egypt. Upon discovering this statement of Josephus, I found it rather challenging and perplexing, because based upon Josephus, this first century historian, he lived during the first century. He was contemporary with the apostles. In other words, he lived during the same time that the apostles lived and were preaching. And with respect to the time frame in which our ancient fathers were in Egyptian captivity, Josephus says that it was only 215 years from the time that Jacob went into Egypt until the time they came out. Now, the reason why it is perplexing is because in the scriptures that have been given to us in the Western world, it says in Exodus chapter 12, verse 40, that the time that the Israelites had lived in Egypt was 430 years. So I have to ask myself the question. In my Bible that has been given to me, it says 430 years that the Israelites were in Egyptian captivity, but Josephus said that it was 215 years. But it was a total of 430 years from the time of our forefather Abraham coming into Canaan. So I have to ask myself the question, why the difference? Then I began to discover that Josephus did not have the same Bible that we have. I know everyone's surprised now. Josephus had a different Bible than what we have today? Yes, he did. The Bible of Josephus, which was also the Bible of Yahshua, which was also the Bible of the apostles, the source that they used that was available in their time was the Septuagint, and the Hebrew text that the Septuagint was translated from. Now, one has to ask, if Josephus, who is the noted historian of the Judean Israelites, if it was not for this man Josephus in his day writing the histories and the wars of the Judeans, we would not have a history other than what we have in the scriptures about our history as being the people of Elohim. Josephus is a very, very significant individual. Very significant. But his information does not line up with the information in the Bibles we have. So maybe we need to look at Josephus's Bible. And we need to see if there's a difference in what the Septuagint says from what the scriptures say in our Bibles. Now I need to make this point also, and that is that the ancient manuscript that the Septuagint was translated from is an earlier, older manuscript than the manuscript that our Bibles are translated from. Our Bibles that we have are translated from the Masoretic text. They were produced by rabbinic, non-believing Judeans. These were those Pharisaic Judeans who basically became rabbinic Jews. They produced a manuscript in the later centuries after Messiah and the apostles began the preaching and the teaching of the message. It came out roughly around about the 2nd century. That's when it began to be developed. The 2nd century, not BC, but 2nd century CE. And somewhere in the process of time, the Western Christian Church adopted that manuscript and used it in its Bibles. Follow. But now let's look at what the Septuagint actually says in its Exodus chapter 20, verse 40. Exodus chapter 12, verse 40. Listen to this. It says, "And the sojourning of the children of Israel, while they sojourned in the land of Egypt and the land of Canaan, was 430 years. Oh! So Josephus got his information from his Bible, and in his Bible, in his day, it says that the children of Israel, notice what it says, sojourned in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan 430 years. So we find that there's a difference between the earlier, older texts in comparison to the one that we get our translation from. Now, I know that there are some folk who probably are a little bit under the collar, getting hot under the collar, because this type of difference raises questions. Thank you. It raises questions. But there is also an earlier biblical manuscript, older than the Septuagint and older than the Masoretic text that we got our scriptures from. And it is the Samaritan Pentateuch. The Samaritans, those folks that developed by being transported by the Babylonians, not the Babylonians, but being transported by the Assyrians and then coming into northern Israel, they have their Pentateuch, their Bible, and that Bible is older than the one that Ezra had. Now check this out. Now I'm going to wrap this up. Listen to what it says in the Samaritan Pentateuch in Exodus chapter 12, verse 40. Same text. Listen to what it says. It says, "Now the sojourning of the Israelites and fathers of them who dwelt in Canaan and in Egypt was 430 years." So we find in these older manuscripts that the information that they had about the time frame of our ancient ancestors being in the land of Egypt was not 430 years. But it was actually half of the amount of time. So the purpose for me sharing this in this history bit is to challenge Zion to begin to return to discovering more ancient sources in the scriptures. Because most of us living in the Western world that have received the faith in the Messiah are unaware of these ancient manuscripts and are also unaware that we have brethren in the faith, such as the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, that I regard as the keepers of the ancient manuscripts, because they are the only ones that have all of the ancient documents in their translation that they preserve, with which has also been verified by the Dead Sea Scrolls that were found. And so, for us, as we look at this information, seeing the differences, what it does, it now challenges us to have to ask the question, well, if our ancient fathers were not in Egypt for 400 years, based upon the more ancient sources, and also the information given to us by such an esteemed historian as Josephus, then how do we deal with the statement found in Genesis chapter 15? Now I'm going to read this and wrap this up. Genesis chapter 15, verse 13, it says, "Then Yahuwah said to Abraham, or Abram, this know for certain, that your offspring shall be aliens in a land that is not theirs, and shall be slaves there, and they shall be oppressed for 400 years. our ancient ancestors were not in Egypt for 400 years, then how do we explain this prophecy that was given to our father Abraham, where it is so very specific, and it says that your offspring will be aliens? And I'm laying the groundwork here. In a land not theirs, and shall be slaves there, and they shall be oppressed there 400, not 215, 400 years. What this tells me is that this prophecy that Elohim made to Abram is not with reference to our ancient fathers going into Egypt. We have historical testimony that they were not in Egypt 400 years, only 215 years. So what that says is, what group of descendants of Abraham, I think you hear where I'm going, would be in a land not theirs and oppressed for 400 years? I think we all know. I think we all can testify to who that people is. But I want to close on that note and let you think about it. I'll deal with this subject in more detail at another time, but I just wanted to share this as a history bit because it is important that as we are discovering more information, as the Almighty is providing us with archaeological finds such as the Dead Sea Scrolls, which was a major archaeological discovery, because finding that information just changed the mindset of many scholars and historians with reference to the Bible and certain things that have been taught in the scriptures. And it's my responsibility as a moray, as a teacher, to help Zion to understand truth. Because as you understand truth and put it together, I believe it will help you to be able to see what is actually going on a prophetic note in our present day. So we'll close with that. Trust that the history bit was informative and helpful, and that it tantalized your spiritual taste buds and your academic taste buds to do more research for yourself.